teach a course that is called a profitable ranching, where the main objective is maximum sustainable profits per acre while improving the land. When I talk about the land, it's the environment. It includes wildlife, microbes, insects, people, everything. So we want to improve that. So our goal is the maximum profits per acre while improving the land. I want to ask you a question. What will be the main determinant of profits on a ranch, a cattle ranch? Huh?
Will you repeat that?
What will be the main determinant of profit on a cattle ranch? Inputs?
Input costs.
Input cost? Yeah, but that wouldn't change profits if you have one cow. So what will be the main determinant factor?
How much beef productivity?
How much what?
Beef you can produce?
How much beef? And that relates to how many cattle you can sustainably support.
And how productive they are.
So the number one determinant is how many animals we can carry sustainably on a ranch. Because if you carry 10, it will give you so much income. But if you can carry 100, the income will be much higher, and the expenses don't need to be much higher if you do it properly. The main determinant of profits on a ranch is the number of cattle you can run sustainably, because we're going to try to have the cattle with no hay. Hay is the number one cost in having a ranch, winter feeding. So we want to reduce that as much as possible. I have a video called Hayless Winter Grazing in Florida. It's 4 DVDs. That explains it, and we're going to talk about that here. So if number of animals is the main determinant of profit on a ranch, what will be the main characteristic that we require of the cows for them to be productive? Fertility, yeah, that's correct. So we require cattle that can be high fertility under this type of management. Because to improve the land, we need to manage 3 factors. Cattle that are severe grazers, the predator effect, that means keep them tight, bunched up, and the grass. So we need to take those 3 into account. That's the minimum whole. Yeah, cattle, the predator effect, that means to keep them bunched up in tight groups, not allow them to be wandering around, and the grass. We need to manage the grass correctly. What I'm going to talk about is universal principles. You might say, well, that works in Florida, and it won't work here. It's different environment, I acknowledge that. But the principles are universal that I'm going to talk about. And I can show you examples of Manitoba, Canada, Montana, Missouri, Ohio, Pennsylvania, the desert in Chihuahua, and the mountains of Chihuahua, the tropics in Mexico, and the subtropics in Florida. So I'm going to show you how we manage, for example, tall fescue. Is that something you have here, tall fescue? Okay. When we went to Missouri 2 years ago, that was their main problem, toxicity in fescue, because it gets hot over there. Here it's not as big as a problem, but we still have to manage for that. Okay, and the need for non-selective grazing. Now we're going to talk about the land. Why do we need non-selective grazing? First of all, we need electric fences so we have control over every mouth and hoof on the land. We cannot have them escaping or running around. We need to have them trained. Next step. Under rotational selective grazing, cattle consume the best species and parts of species first, leading to less desirable species increasing in number and covering the whole pasture. They're not stupid, they're very smart. So they say, oh, no, this is not good. So they go to the more tender parts, newer parts. So by not having them graze everything, it will give us less cow days that break. Cow days is the amount of days that we can have a specific number of cattle per acre. That's how we measure productivity. For example, if 1 acre can give us 80 cow days, it's less productive than an acre that gives us 200 cow days. That's how we measure it. So when we allow them to select and then move them on, how would that affect the rest period? Will you have to come back sooner or later?
Later,
If they eat only a third, would they have to come back earlier or later?
you mean you run out of grass?
You're going to run out of grass, so they have to come back sooner. When they come back sooner, which plants will they regraze again? The best ones or the bad ones?
The best.
So we are effectively killing the best ones by repeatedly defoliating them, and we are not taking down the bad ones. So we end after 2 years with a lot of bad ones and fewer of the more desirable ones, and we call that succession, species composition shift to less desirable ones. That's why it's so important that cattle graze non-selectively, so they have to compete on an even plane, because you take the only way to graze non-selective is to graze it all down. That's the only way, because cattle graze, as you said, they take the best ones first and then they move on.
Can you talk for a moment about fescue toxicity and why and how it affects them to go ahead and eat that
Sure.
endophyte fescue?
Fescue endophyte, that's an endophyte fungi that allows it to survive the heat better, because fescue is a C3 grass, which means it's a cool season grass. So it's great when it's cool. Spring, fall, winter, great. High quality, and it will allow itself to be stockpiled. Very good grass. But in summer, if you allow it to grow tall and rank, and you have cattle graze it, the endophyte produces a toxin that is on the stems and on the seed heads. So the cattle eat that, and they get this toxicity, which doesn't allow them to cope with the heat, and the hoof can slough out. They can die. The tail, they can lose the switch of the tail, and they become very affected by heat. Even if it's not very hot, they will look like if it's very hot. They go into the water, and they can even abort and die. Severe non-selective grazing, because cattle are severe grazers. How low do they take the clover before they move to the next plant? To the ground. I'm going to show pictures. So they are severe grazers, where all the plants are grazed, trampled in a short time. This leads to a more desirable species composition as it levels the playing field. The type of grazing we do will determine the type of regrowth we'll have. When you mow your lawn, what comes up? Leaves or stems? Why? Because it was taken down low, and that releases that inhibits the auxin, which is a hormone that is released by the seed head. When you cut that off, then the new tillers and new leaf can develop. That's why we have a very dense golf type pasture when we mow. We can do the same with cows and get a much better grass composition or ratio of leaves to stem, because the saliva in the cow, when she grazes short to the ground, that saliva will give you like an 80% increase in productivity next grazing compared to mowing. So it's very important. As the grass needs the cows needs the grass. They evolved together. So the grass needs the saliva and the trampling and everything, and the cow needs the grass to survive. With a high stock density, aeration also occurs with their hoof, thanks to the action of the hoofs concentrated on a smaller area. So if we give them a small area where they are almost touching shoulder to shoulder, they will aerate the soil, they will put dung and urine there, and they will graze non-selectively. What follows is the appropriate rest period for our goals. Next one, please. This grass had been managed what they call holistic management. but it's not according to the book of Alan Savory. But it's what they're doing now, because they think that if they do that, and they are totally against protein supplementation. So if you don't supplement with protein, they cannot eat that and survive, they die, because this is very high in fiber. This is Heteropodon contortus. It's called red grass in Mexico, and it's very tough. It's like so high in fiber and lignin that you cannot break it with your hand. After 8 years of grazing selectively, rotationally, this was better species, and now it's only this type of non-desirable grass. So we told them what you need to do in November 2014, I'm sorry. What you need to do is put the cows in a very small areas and move them every hour or 2 hours and feed them some protein so they can digest that. Because it's not the cow that digests the roughage. It's the microbes in the rumen that will digest the fiber. And if there's not enough protein, which in this case in a cow, 7 to 8% is enough. If there is not 7 to 8, if this grass is 4, they cannot digest it, and they slows the passage of the fiber in the rumen, and they get constipated, so they start eating less, and when they eat less, you start getting the manure higher and stacking up. Here, that may not be a big problem, but in that environment, it was. Next one. So we put the cows, and now we can see the stones, and they took the grass down. So we got like 200 cow days per hectare. A hectare is 2.5 acres. This is on a 14-inch rainfall zone that this year they only have gotten 5 inches. So this becomes very important, the way of management. So can you go back? This is before grazing, and this is the next day after grazing. Next. Here. The same tree, same mountain. Okay, next. Then I visited there in July 7, and it had rained 1/6 of an inch. So it started to green up. Same tree, same mountain. Next one. And this is 26 days later after it started raining. So because the roots were strong and deep due to long rest periods, they were ready to jump up in growth. But now we're getting better. This one, this is a desmanthus, a perennial legume that is high quality, and it has flowers now, so it will set seed, because now we're going to give a long rest period. And that environment, that's what it requires. Every environment will be different. We're going to talk about here later. And this is more of that same one, a new one, and another one. So this will become better and better every year with this treatment, instead of going backwards with the previous treatment, which, by the way, rotational selective grazing is much, much better than continuous grazing. But this is much, much better than selective continuous grazing. Next one, please. Here, this is the regrowth that we see. This is the same tree. That's where the picture was taken. This is a cowboy hat. And there is a cowboy under the hat. And there is a horse under the cowboy. This is the legume I was talking about. They call it gatoncillo. It's related to Illinois bundleflower. I don't know if you have that growing here. You have it?
I've tried.
What is it called?
Illinois bundleflower.
It will grow.
It's a very good legume. It was a native of the tall prairie. The tall prairie had like over 200 or 300 species. Deep rooted, so if you had a drought, it would keep producing. That's what built the soils in the whole USA, the prairie, the Midwest. So one of them was the Illinois bundleflower. It grew this high, deep tap roots, high quality legume, like alfalfa. And then we had the 4 main grasses was big blue stem, Indian grass, switchgrass, and eastern gamma grass. Do you have any of those growing here? I've been looking for them because they're very important. I'm going to continue with why non-selective grazing is so important for the health of the land. With electric fences, we can allow for total control of our cattle, and we can achieve non-selective grazing, adequate recovery periods, non-growing forage reserve, etc. Like in this farm, we have a winter stockpile that we set land aside for winter, and then we can concentrate on a smaller area that won't get away from us through the growing season. So we're going to talk about that later. And under non-selective grazing, thanks to a better harvest efficiency, we can give a longer recovery period which will allow for better species to become more productive and increase in number. Any questions up to here? Okay, next one. Why is non-selective grazing necessary for the health of our pastures? When we allow selective grazing, that means the cattle can select what they want and move on, we are favoring the less desirable species and they can dominate the pasture. We don't want that. After non-selective grazing, the species with wider leaves will displace the less desirable ones. So the best species will have wider leaves. Orchard grass. Orchard grass, does it have a wide leaf or a narrow leaf? Wide compared to others. So it will gather more sunlight and make more photosynthesis, and will put out more liquid carbon, which is sugars, into the soil through the root exudates. And that will feed the microbes in the soil, which in return will release nutrients for the plant. Grass plants that are very narrow leaf don't gather so much sunlight, so they cannot grow as fast under the same conditions as a wider leaf. But when you graze selectively, you weaken the wide leaf plants because cows go after the energy stored there, and they avoid the narrow leaf. So then you're managing to have more narrow leaf and less of the productive wide leaf. So it becomes very important. As the fertility increases, organic matter, with this type of management, organic matter will start to increase very fast, not only due to the dung and urine return homogeneously on the ranch or the farm, but because by pulsing the grazing totally, much more organic matter is released by the roots, and much more photosynthesis is being carried out. Imagine of your paddocks as a solar panel. Do you want a big solar panel to gather more energy, or a very small solar panel? We want the larger solar panel we can have.
What's the time you're talking about? You're talking about rest. What do you...
I will talk about rest later, but right now I'm talking about a solar panel. If you have a solar panel to convert sunlight to energy, because so much sunlight hits a square yard per day. You can either have growing leaf that capture a lot of sunlight, or you can have stems trampled down that don't capture any sunlight.
No brainer.
Do we want a big solar panel or a small solar panel? Do we want wider leaf species or narrow leaf species?
Why?
Why? Why? Because they capture more energy. Now, if we put...
They want them.
Cattle want them. Why? Because it's higher in digestibility. Leaves can have up to 65% digestibility. Stems will be around 30-35% digestibility. Leaves carry the most part of the photosynthesis. Stems don't carry much photosynthesis. Okay, that's been forgotten. It's a very important concept. Next one, please. Now, the results of non-selective grazing. The highly desirable species return when we defer part of the farm for the whole growing season. Why would they return? The seeds are there in the soil. They can stay there for 100 years or more if we don't invert the soil. So in most farms, the soil is not inverted, so the seeds are there. Why can't they come up? Because every time they come up, a cow comes and tears it out. It needs a longer rest period. So when we defer part of the farm for the whole growing season, as we did here, and you're going to see that later, that's when the best species can come up and produce seed and establish more. We can recruit seedlings that way. if we keep rotating and selective grazing the best, we cannot recruit new seedlings. That's called succession. That has also been forgotten due to no monitoring. We need to monitor what we're doing. Are we going forward or backwards? Longer recovery periods due to a better harvest efficiency. If this is the ranch, and we start here grazing, and we take only 1/3, and we move, we have to come back 3 times as fast as if we took everything. If we take everything, then it's very slow to come back. So that's why. That's why we can achieve longer recovery periods due to a better harvest efficiency. And what gives the profits? Higher sustainable stocking rate per ranch. So I'm going to talk about how we can double our stocking rate on the average while improving the land.